come and occupy their chairs, please. Please. This in the cricket is called fade out movement. I will now request the publisher of the book, Ms. Sonami Desai, to felicitate and welcome our guests. Director, Mr. Kakirde. Thank you, ma'am. The sequence of events is going to be like this, that uh, the first the first event would be release of the book. So I'll now request Ms. Desai to again come and grace the stage, and all of us, if you could please release the book. Our chief guest today, Mr. Srinivas Rao Soni, is an former IAS officer of 1970 batch. And he has had a very checkered career. Most interestingly, he has been associated with the Ministry of Defense in various capacity, with Joint Intelligence Committee, and very unusual kind of experience that he has had. He was advisor to and associated with Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan for many years. He is a scholar in Dari, and my own contact with him, I have seen him, his study of Islam is so deep and so good that one of the famous Maulanas, Maulana Madani, he has given him run for the money while quoting Quran Sharif. I mean, that is the time in one of these seminars I had seen him talking about it. He also has done, as many of the, most of the IAS officers have varied experiences, but his prominent work has been in Afghanistan. He was advisor to President Hamid Karzai for almost 7 years, sir? 5 to 7 years. And at a very difficult period, he helped establish the, help the Afghans establish some kind of a constitutional order. Unfortunately, the Americans, you know what all had happened, but history will still record that a sincere attempt was made by India and through the medium of people like Srinivas Rao to bring some kind of peace and order to a corner of our troubled world. Jury is still out. The way Afghanistan seems to be developing today, I wouldn't be surprised that we as a country and India and Indian interests would be probably be looked after better under some form of modified Taliban or whatever it is. He's a better judge to comment on that as he feels free. We are doubly lucky to have chairperson Ms. Leena Mehendale as our chairperson for the Bharati Vidya Bhavan, and who was a former Chief Secretary of Maharashtra, 74 batch Indian Administrative Service. Besides being an administrator, she of course began her career as a physicist, science, and then went into arts. And she has worked in so many areas, especially in the, what struck me was, and I didn't know about it, I would say, that she worked for the emancipation of Devdasis and in that area. And post-retirement, one of the sterling achievements that she's doing in Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan is to revival of Sanskrit as a medium for instruction, and she herself is a Sanskritist of great stature. This is something, and she's planned it so well that the children who study now in Sanskrit, she's also taken on the responsibility of training the teachers who should teach normal subjects in Sanskrit. This is something, again, a path-breaking initiative I don't think anywhere else in India, to my knowledge at least. And we are extremely lucky to have such a person as chairperson today. Mr. Nandakumar Kakede, who is the director of Bharati Vidya Bhavan institutions, is basically a hands-on journalist and who continues to write in his columns in Marathi in many papers. Plus, he is virtually the what you can call as CEO, the one who runs everything in Bharati Vidya Bhavan. We are glad and we welcome him to the stage today. I will not take too much time, but the questions asked to me many times was, why another book on Chhatrapati Shivaji? There are so many of them. And why in English? Firstly, during my research, when I had started studying the insurgency and guerrilla warfare worldwide, I realized that one of the foremost guerrilla tactics and guerrilla warfare experts worldwide was within our country, and that is Chhatrapati Shivaji. And somehow when one reads of guerrilla warfare or counterinsurgency, his name doesn't seem to figure anywhere in the world. That fault is ours, because we have not managed to get across his deeds, his acumen, his military skills to the wider global audience. It is out of this heartfelt need that I embarked upon this particular venture of writing about the Marathas and Chhatrapati Shivaji and his military strategy, naval strategy, and of course all that resulted into Maratha Empire. It has been, I mean, there are, in the history there have been so many of these fleeting moments that one saw, where the whole history of India, and by its extension, India being one of the biggest countries in Asia and world, the world history would have been different than what it is today. these tracks changed. The first, of course, was Chhatrapati Shivaji died 10 years too early. The path on which he was going, the naval expansion, if he would have had about 10 years more, he would have created a powerful navy in the Arabian Sea, which would have challenged the European powers in Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean, and what would have been the consequences of that for Asian continent are mind-boggling to even think of. In the later period, his example and his strategy was studied always by the Marathas. Whenever they were in difficulty, they would always refer to what would, as they called him, Thorle Abba Sahib. He was never referred to by any other name. He was called as Thorle Abba Sahib. What would he have done in a particular situation? But subsequently, many of the setbacks that the Marathas received, including the one at Panipat, were basically because we forgot what Chhatrapati had taught us and how he dealt with the issues. The second reason to embark on this journey was, unfortunately, especially in English language, there has been a tendency these days of equating Chhatrapati Shivaji with Aurangzeb. Somehow people feel, unless you talk about Aurangzeb, you're not doing justice, you're not being neutral, you're not being objective. So Aurangzeb has been raised to sort of equivalent of Chhatrapati Shivaji. There's no equivalence. One, that is Chhatrapati Shivaji created an empire out of nothing, and the second, Aurangzeb, destroyed an empire which was one of the world's greatest empires. So how can there be any equivalence? But such is the atmosphere or ecosystem that this is being done these days. So I wanted to stop this. The third part was, and something which has had an impact and continues to have impact till to date, is that people in Maharashtra also, and definitely in India, have forgotten that it was the Maratha flag that flew on the Red Fort between 1772 to 1803. The day Shah Alam was led by his finger by Mahatji Shinde and put on the Delhi throne in 1772, Mughal Empire ended. It was from the Marathas that the British took over Delhi and Red Fort. And for that period, brief period though, it was the Marathas who ruled from Delhi. You today go and ask anybody in Delhi, this particular episode has been totally put under the carpet and people do not even know about it. So this needed to be rectified, and the deeds of Marathas and the fact that it is from the Marathas who the British took away the empire of India and not Mughals. The consequences of this myth has been creation of Pakistan. In 47, it was a very potent argument put forward by Jinnah that India was ruled by Mughals. Now that Mughals have gone back, India was ruled first by Mughals. The British took away India from Mughals. Now that the English are going back, Mughals must come back. It is out of this mindset that Pakistan got created. And this mindset needs to be corrected with historical facts. I'm not making this up. These documents and things are available within the archives. Unfortunately, historians have been cherry-picking facts. They don't tell lies. They cherry-pick facts, and inconvenient to their ideological prism, those facts are never presented, and then that is sort of propagated as history. My aim was to end this charade and try and put across the true history of Marathas and those period, and of course contributions of Chhatrapati Shivaji the Great in establishing Indian Swarajya or Indian independence. You look at 1,000 years of Indian history, you will not find a single ruler who gave a objective or slogan like Hindavi Swarajya. Rajya or Swarajya for entire India. Try and see any history books, any of the big kings and others, you will not find. They all had parochial view. It was Chhatrapati Shivaji alone who had an all India view. Now this is something which needs to be emphasized today and forever. I think there are many things in the book that you will find. For instance, we think that spying and MI6, etc., is a modern phenomena. It is not so. It is during Wellesley's time, when the Shinde and Holkars were fighting against the British together, the British sent fake letters written by Daulat Rao Shinde to Amrut Rao Peshwa, so that there should be a fight between and a schism between Holkars and Shindes, and they should not come together against the British. This is again recorded, and when the Marathas realized this, they said, henceforth we will not write letters, instead we will meet in person and decide on military strategy. This is again recorded in documents by the Marathas, written by Yashwantrao Holkar, who was the last one to fight the British. Now, I will not bore you with any other details. For finding these interesting facts and whatever I had to say, it is all there in the book. And I will now request our chief guest today, Srinivas Rao Soni, to say a few words and share with us his insights on both Chhatrapati Shivaji as well as his wider experience of Afghanistan, because after all it is the Battle of Panipat, which was between Afghans and Marathas, that decided the fate of India, and it is the Marathas who went all the way up to Attak and checked the Afghans. So over to Srinivas Rao, please.
How much time should I speak? 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I'll keep it as Dr. Leena Mehendle, Chairman of the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Colonel Alan Atale, Shri Nankumar Kakede. I should also like to mention General Kulkarni, who is seated here, who's played such a vital role in a key respect for the defense of our country. We have with us also General Ashok Joshi. Likewise, his contribution is extremely significant. We have with us Ambassador Mangal Murthy, who was in Pakistan when the 1965 war was being fought. And we know the conditions in which he functioned. We have here an officer from the Armored Corps, Arun Patak. We have also here with us, seated behind, very in concealment as it were, a very distinguished officer, Brigadier Ajit Apte. This is a great honor that you have asked me, Anil, for this function to speak on Sri Shivajithe Shivaji Maharaj. I would like to just focus on a few points. I should like to focus on just a few points because everybody here and outside would really like to read what you have written. I would like to highlight just one or two points. One concerning the influences on Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj right from the days of his early childhood. So Jadunath Sarkar, in his book on Chhatrapati Shivaji, and even Graham Duff, they did not attribute to him literacy. The fact of the matter was that he was proficient. He was in fact learned. Can you hear me at the back? इसको बंद कर दीजिए, मैं वैसे ही बोलूँगा, इसको बंद कर दीजिए. Them to hear what I say. Can you hear now? Okay. So I'll just mention a few points. One is that there was a profound influence on Chhatrapati Shivaji, Bal Shivaji, of both Shahaji Raje as well as Rajmata Jizabai. Till the age of 7, Chhatrapati Shivaji, when he was as a child, was greatly influenced by his father. And he saw how he functioned. Chhatrapati Shivaji also was deeply influenced by his mother, who was an extraordinary, enlightened lady, and introduced him to the ancient epic literature of our country, as also to the values embedded in that literature. A love for what Bharata was, what inspired the heroes of our ancient past, a love for our nation, and a sense of duty and commitment to be of service to the nation. He moved with his mother Rani Jizamata to Mahuli, to Shivneri, to Vajapur, and also with his father Shahaji Raje when he was with the Nizam Shahi, and afterwards when the Nizam Shahi fell, with the Adil Shahi. So some of the values that he was imbued with was, if I may use the Sanskrit terms, Swadharma Priti. Swadharma Priti. Dharma Niti. Then also he was introduced to the contributions of the saint poets that formed what we call the Bhakti movement in Maharashtra. And these were a marvelous galaxy of thinkers. We say that Santa Shiromani Dhaneshwar Maharaj, Tukaram Maharaj, Savta Mari, Gora Kumbhar, Ramdas Swami, whole galaxy of them from various vocations, even cobblers, all of them were imbued by an awareness that something was happening in our country which required the consolidation of the public mind, injection into it of an awareness of key principles of humanism, oneness, unity. Take the Varkari Sampradaya, for example. It's an extraordinary movement. People from all parts of Maharashtra converging and proceeding to Pandharpur, and not just proceeding together, singing together. It has been analyzed that the word Vitthala, chanted, has some neural effects on the brain which help stamina. The whole concept of dharma in Sanskrit literature, in Sanskrit language, every word has a meaning, but every letter also has a meaning. In fact, every letter also has a numerical value. So the word dharma, dharayati iti dharma, what upholds, what sustains, what invigorates, that is dharma. Dharayate iti dharma. And the twin Mahavakya is Dharmo rakshati rakshata. Who safeguards, defends, protects, advances dharma. Dharma also safeguards, protects. It's a mutual symbiotic relationship. So ideas like these were introduced to Chhatrapati Shivaji. But he was also introduced to the Vedas, to the Dharma Shastras. And I am saying this on the basis of literature which is available now to us, which is found in the Bhandarkar Institute and in other institutions in our country, which is printed. But all this literature somehow, or most of it, a lot of it, is still in the original Marathi. And one of the things that is very important that Colonel Atale and other authors like him, like General Pitre and Satwalekar have done, is to bring it out for a larger readership by using the vehicle of the English language. So, for example, in Shiva Bharat, which is a Marathi work, in chapter 9 on page 83, it is stated that when Chhatrapati Shivaji, as a child, when he was still 6.5 years old or less, he had already learned the alphabet, and it is stated that when he was asked to write a letter, an alphabet, he would write that in the next one also, and the next one also. When he was asked to recite one line of a Sanskrit composition, he would recite that and the next one also. He was an aware student, an aware child. And he was not just proficient, but in Marathi or literature or Sanskrit literature, there was a period of 3 years in which he received linguistic training. Thus he knew Farsi, he probably knew Arabic as well, he knew Kannada, Marathi also. There are documents that he has signed, there are drafts that have been put up to him that have been corrected by him in his own hand. So the myth, the statement that he could not read or write, is from sources which had their own historiography to project. This is one of the points that Colonel Attale has made nicely in his book, that there was a historiography, a way of writing history of our country that suited those in power. And there was censorship. For example, during the COVID period, my better half, or rather I would say my much better half, and we read in stages every day, turn by turn, portions from the Valmiki Ramayana. And after completing that, we went on to the Charitamanas of Tulasi. We found that there were some extrapolations in it. There were some interferences in it. There were twists which made no sense. And mind you, these translations and the originals were given together in no less than the Gita press, because there was censorship. So, how many of us would know, for example, that Chhatrapati Shivaji, Bal Shivaji, was introduced to the Shruti, the Smriti, the Puranas, to Rajniti, apart from the Dharma Shastras and to poetry, to prosody, as also, of course, to the physical sciences. In terms of bodybuilding, Kamavalela Sharir, this concept of Kamavalela Sharir, that you exercise to build your body, that discipline that brings mental discipline, determination, willpower to achieve something, these values, these goals, these motivations were instilled in him. He was also introduced to face reading, to palmistry, to astrology, to selecting auspicious times. This is in Shiva Bharat, chapter 10, page 90. Now, this was a time when Shahaji Raje and his elder son Sambhaji moved on to the Adil Shahi period. And then at Shivneri and then at Pune, Bal Shivaji was brought up by his revered mother, Mata, and he was introduced to the horror that was abroad in our country at that time. Later on, the knowledge that he had gained of all his literature and his language is to be found reflected in the names that he gave to the force that he conquered. Many of them had Sanskrit names. Take for example, Simhagad, Vishalgad, Suvarnadurg, Vijayadurg, Bhimagad, Pandavgad, Sundargad, Prachandagad, so many. He did that because immediately the character of that fortification, its location, its appearance, its value came to his mind and resonated in terms of what he had read. He also brought out the Rajya Vyavahara Kosh. Rajya Vyavahara Kosh, in which every Persian letter, every Persian word in official transactions was replaced with Marathi words. So as part of his awareness that cyber, as we call it, information warfare, had been carried out by the rulers of the time. Now, it's very interesting that at that time, ruling from Agra and Delhi was a monarch who had the greatest empire at that time in the world. It's also ironical that here was a budding hero who at the age of barely, when he was still in his teens, had gone forth to Rairi, taken an oath for the liberation of his country. Later I used to call it Rairishwar, and the first dengi, first donation, which is also recorded from Chhatrapati Shivaji, was to Rairishwar. Likewise, to some other forts, as when he was still a child or in his teens. Now these things are brought out of Marathi literature. But in Delhi at that time was a ruler who was an implacable professor of Mohammedanism. Now, we have very good accounts in Afghan archives about Aurangzeb. Afghans actually are very archives conscious. And interestingly, unlike our records which were destroyed, very few records remain, like our great buildings and artwork and literatures. Somehow, Afghanistan, which was also a very ancient inheritor of culture, ancient culture, maintained its records. So in the what is called the Archive-e-Milli, National Archives of Afghanistan, which Sultan Abdul Rahman Khan built in 1890, as also the archives in the Arg, in the citadel, the presidential palace, a storehouse of literature, of ancient documents. Perhaps you might like to go there and access it for your next edition. For example, in the Archive-e-Milli, there are as many as 190,000 documents. Likewise, when these colonial powers came in and had access to Afghanistan, they took away a large portion of archives. In Ambassador Mangalmurthy might be aware because he was in Switzerland. There is the Bibliothek Afghanica in Budendorf, which is a collection of Persian works donated by Veronica and Boucher Dietsche. Then there's the Centre d'études de Research in Paris. And of course, the India Office records in the British Library, the Afghan resources from the 17th century onwards. The Kitab Ki Khana, that has about 193,000 documents. So accessing those documents is also important because those have largely not been published. And we get an alternate view of what Maharaj did and the course of Indian history from those documents. I would like to here point to one interesting feature of diplomacy that is also important. Chhatrapati Shivaji took care never to have a confrontation with the Mughals and the Deccan Sultanates at the same time. In fact, he took care to parley with Aurangzeb at a time when he was threatened by the Adil Shahis, when Aurangzeb was governor of the Deccan. Later, to parley with the Deccan Sultanates of Adil Shah, when Aurangzeb was threatening Maharashtra. He displayed extraordinary statesmanship in the manner in which correspondence was conducted with the Rajput princes. In fact, some of the most vivid accounts, daily reports, khabarat as they are called, as to Chhatrapati Shivaji's visit to Agra for the 50th anniversary of the Mughal emperor after the Treaty of Purandar and leading to his escape from Agra are to be found in the Jaipur State Archives. They were daily reporters traveling from Agra to Jaipur and instructions back to those reporters as to what more to find out. So those indicate how Chhatrapati Shivaji, assisted by Bahirji Nayak, who was chief of intelligence, had made arrangements in advance of going to Agra as to what are the places and points where they could receive resupply and protection in case an escape was required. One of the arts that he had been taught as a child was the art of disguise, and he utilized that during his escape from Agra, taking a direction not straight away towards Maharashtra, but perhaps towards Mathura, and via the Gondwana land across the country, Maharashtra, back to here, to Raigad. This brings me to the point of the concept of Maharashtra. And here we find in Sabhasad indication of what understanding was introduced to Maharaj. What is the concept of Maharashtra? Maharashtra is not just this territory which forms the state of Maharashtra today. Maharashtra is a larger concept of a great nation. And you will be surprised that a detailed adumbration of what is a Rashtra is given in the Suktas of the Rigved and expanded in Suktas of the Atharva Ved. Rashtriya Sukta, Rashtra, there are two Suktas in the Atharva Veda. I can give the details to anybody who wishes to know, which speak of what a Rashtra is, what is nation, what is nationality, what is nationalism, what are the duties of the citizen. So these were introduced to Maharaj when he was still a child. Likewise, the Vyakhya of the term Veer and Mahavir. We have the word Veer, which we understand as a hero who has displayed heroism, who has, like many of the general officers here, shown what it is to generate not just bravery within themselves, but lead by valor and personal example the people whom they lead. Veer. What is Mahavir? Mahavir, of course, is a great hero, but Mahavir is he who destroys enmity. वीर आहे जो शत्रूचं दमन करतो, प्रताप दाखवून, शौर्य दाखवून. महावीर तो आहे जो शत्रुत्वाचा नाश करतो. Who then wins over the consciousness, wins over the minds and reflexes of who was an enemy earlier. These concepts were taught to Chhatrapati Shivaji, and he amplified them and generated and displayed them through his own personal example. He set an example of how to lead by personal example. Meanwhile, what was Aurangzeb doing? At that time, Aurangzeb had brought together 500 scholars from places as far away as Iraq, in even Persia, and of course Arabia, and from South Asia, of course, all over, to compile what was called later as the Fatwa-e-Alamgiri. Fatwa-e-Alamgiri consolidated based on Sharia, basically Hanafi Sharia, but also drawing upon Sharia of Hanafi, Shafi and Maliki. That was Mohammedan jurisprudence. And this, in fact, became the underpinning, the basic foundation of how the Qaris and Maulanas, the Mullahs, pass judgments. So, fatwa by itself only means opinion, but opinion coming from an alim or a Maulana was important. It was to be followed. And Aurangzeb, on top of that, gave himself the authority based on these studies, which are documented in the Fatwa-e-Alamgiri, or as the Arabs called it, the Fatwa al-Aramgiriya, to authority to issue farmans, orders, commandments, the failure of the contravention of which had requisite punishments. Thus, under this, incentive was given to plunder, looting to the believer. By law, you could venture out into territory where Mohammedanism was not the official religion, Darul Harb as it was called, and you could come back with property including human beings, because the kafir was counted as property, slaves, whether children or women or boys, and he was rewarded for it under the fatwa. This is by law. A believer in territory in Darul Islam would be authorized to go outside, loot, plunder, capture, come back and be rewarded and authorized to keep it. Likewise, the incentive to convert, or as they say, revert, because the Islamic principle is that everybody is born a Muslim, but they go astray after birth. So conversion only means reversion to Mohammedanism. So everybody had the authorization by virtue of verses in the Quran for da'wah, invitation to join the true religion, the perfect religion, the perfected religion. And very simple, just a few words, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, and become a Muslim. And if you leave, you're fit for slaughter, and not by the state, but for any Muslim, anywhere. And not only is he authorized, he is mandated to do that. So these are things that, this was life in those days. Have I exceeded my time? So this was to use a modern term, ecosystem that was obtaining this paradigm of complete abject servitude, oppression. And this was everywhere, village to village. People would come and complain to Chhatrapati Shivaji. And he was not someone who was confined to his palace, Lal Mahal. He would ride out, trained in riding, a superb horseman, and stop and meet people. People would approach him. It is a tradition in Indian administration from ancient times that an administrator who goes out into the village, who is accessible, not just accessible, but who reaches the common person, he is then conversed with. The British realized that, and the assistant collector's manual, which I got from my father, On the first chapter, it is written, be careful to go out every night and let your stirrup be held by someone and then listen to him. So, being accessible, Chhatrapati Shivaji did that the British learned from him, but they interpreted him as a vassal, erased him from British history. And these things made a monarch who was inspirational. He was already magnetic. We have a description of his physical appearance. He had magnetic eyes, his visage always smiling. People would get riveted looking at him. Muscular of build, dignified deportment. His speech was very pleasant, was charming, hypnotic in effect. And who has said this? Cosmo de Garda, a Portuguese. Henry Oxenden has left this. There is another British officer who attended and has written an account of it. Colonel Atterley would have that record from the British Museum of a very charismatic personality. So, such a person galvanized people of all walks of life to generate a people's struggle, a people's movement. It was not the type of confrontation between one king and another for territory and conquest. It was under the leadership of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, a movement in which everyone felt bound by his own volition to contribute. And contribute they did, whether it was the ironsmith making swords or the carpenter making bullock carts or the tailor making clothes, all contributed. The Maratha race, if I may say so, they are given to agriculture and occasionally to armament and militarism. Here they took to it, inspired by this brilliant, charismatic human being who led by example, who showed compassion where compassion was necessary, and who was kind in a very astute way. Thus, when Aurangzeb descended to destroy the sultanates of Delhi, of the Deccan, on the calculation that Chhatrapati Shivaji was receiving assistance and collaborating with them, and they were receiving assistance and collaborating with him. So his calculation was, I will destroy the Deccan sultanates one by one first, and then attack the realm of Chhatrapati Shivaji. A lot of the armies of the Deccan Sultanate, which were Mohammedan, they came where? To Chhatrapati Shivaji, to be enrolled with him. There is a very famous incident in 1699. When this is after Chhatrapati, when Aurangzeb had come. Mind you, Aurangzeb did not come to Swaraj territory until he had made sure over a period of 2 years that Chhatrapati Shivaji had transitioned away. He dared not, after his own maternal uncle Shaista Khan's experience, he did not take that risk. But finally, when he came systematically, there's that instance that he had besieged Satara fort with heavy artillery from all sides. And the guns would require, on their being fired, to be cooled. And that cooling arrangement used to take the better part of an hour or two. In that interim period, contingents would charge down from the fort to come and spike the guns. One such contingent had come down, and you can imagine the scene. Satara fort in the distance, Aurangzeb somewhere there, looking at the fort with a telescope while this proceeding was going on. And then he sees this contingent coming down fighting hand to hand all the way. Ultimately, 13 people badly injured were caught. So he asked them to be produced before them. And he asked them, they got their names inquired and their religions thereafter, and who is Shia and who is Sunni, Maratha, whatever. He found that out of those 13, 9 were Marathas, 3 were Muslims, 1 was Shia and 2 were Sunni. So then he asked his ulama, because he was always have ulama with him, to advise on punishment. So the ulama gave advice that those who were of the kuffar, they should be slaughtered. Those who were of the true faith, they should be punished but not killed. He wrote right across that page of the opinion given to him, said, what you have written is by the Hanafi Sharia. Look at other Sharia and advise. So then they got the hint, and then they advised that all should be slaughtered. But the impression made on Aurangzeb's mind was, what is this? Chhatrapati Shivaji had passed away in 1680. This was 1699. 19 years after that, there was still this electricity, this energy in people to fight for Swaraj. That was because of that man. That was his genius. So, this important personality is not important just for Maharashtra. He is central in the rebuilding of our nation. His values, his ideals, his goals. Rashtra Dharma. Rashtra Ubharni che kam. Literally it means national reconstruction. Rashtra Ubharni, national reconstruction. To again arouse that ideal which Sri Ram had exemplified as a ruler and as a state. One point about what happened when Zaman Shah was attacking India, which is well documented in Afghan literatures. At that time, the East India Company was in position. They had their base in Calcutta. Lord Mornington was Governor General. When Zaman Shah was anticipated to be gearing up to attack India, mind you, at that time, the British had not even reached beyond Western UP. How did they solve it, that problem? They used diplomacy. They sent a mission under Malcolm, John Malcolm, all the way to the Shah of Iran, Fath Ali Shah, and they concluded a treaty with him that we shall assist you against your enemies, and you coordinate with us, you give us some trading stations, and you cooperate with us against our enemies. It's a proper treaty, very well drafted. And one of the first things they said was, now you mount a campaign against Afghanistan, specifically mobilize against Herat. So that is what Iran, Persia did at that time. They mobilized against Persia. And Zaman Shah, who was ready with his army to attack Indian territory, had to postpone that program and leave it. Now here in 1761, this diplomacy the Marathas lacked. They did not parley with Iran in the way the British did just 11 years later, or 1802, just 40 years later. Nothing much had really changed in terms of technology. Likewise, when the army that went from Pune went all the way to Delhi, Baghpat and Sonpat and Panipat, It was friendless. It's not the Sikhs supported, not the Rajputs, not the Dogras, not other principalities in what is today Uttar Pradesh. They were all on their own. In fact, they rather welcomed that there should be this confrontation. Either way they stood today, either there would not be an Afghan attack on them or a Maratha attack on them. Chhatrapati Shivaji's diplomacy was different, more subtle, more careful. And thus he was able to visit Sri Sailam in what is today, what was Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, and build a Mallikarjun Swami temple. I have taxed your patience and exceeded my time as well. So all I can say again is to congratulate you on your wonderful book. I hope it receives attention beyond Maharashtra, across India and outside also. Thank you very much for doing me this honor. Jai Hind, Jai Maharashtra.
I will, thank you very much, sir, for extremely riveting talk about Chhatrapati Shivaji, as well as the news about the Afghan archives. I didn't know about it, frankly. I would now request our chairperson, Madam Leena Mehendale, to sum up the proceedings today. Madam.
Namaskar. After a very, very wonderful speech by my senior colleague, Shri Soni, I don't think I should be speaking too much. But I cannot hold back my willingness to thank Colonel Atle, because we have, while studying in the school and later on while studying the history of other countries, it was always striking me that as far as Shivaji is concerned, we are all taught in the school that there was a great king, Shivaji, in Maharashtra. So, the description of Shivaji is that he is a king of a very small state. Because when we go to school, we consider Maharashtra as one of the 35, 36 states of India. So, one such small state out of a very large country called India, and there is this king called Shivaji, and he died at a very early age, only around 50 or 55 years. That's all that he got. And after that, the history books in the school suddenly jumped to the creation of Indian National Congress. So, what happens in between? Okay? Because Indian National Congress is taking you to 1889 or so. And Shivaji, you are still in 1680. So, what happens in those 200 years? Then our teachers would say, oh, all those 200 years, the Indian history is basically the consolidation of British Empire in India, the structuralization of Indian administration, and the wars that British either fought or wanted to fight, either with Afghanistan or with China, and then the World War. In between, there are two brief mentions which I remember to have read in the school book. One was about Guru Gobind Singh, and another was about this Sher-e Punjab, I'm forgetting, Ranjit Singh. So that's all about the Indian history. But suddenly you go to Kashi, Vishwanath Mandir, and then you come to know from the people that this Vishwanath temple, which was destructed by Aurangzeb, was resurrected by Ahilyabai Holkar. So who is she? Then suddenly you read about Jhansi ki Rani and you ask, who is she? And then, in very small tidbits, we are told about their history. But as one of my very good friends from Haryana, who is sort of really taken it as a passion or a mission for himself, that the history of Marathas in Panipat, there should be a proper archive, museum, and a whole lot of literature, etc., be there in Panipat. And mind you, he is not a Maharashtrian. He belongs to the northern part of Haryana, close to Himachal Pradesh. But it is his passion. And he was once telling me that the Indian history, right from the Ghazni who came to Gujarat, the Someshwar temple, from there onward, the Indian history has been the history of Veer Purush. But we have not been able to sort of chronically write about all of them. So how, despite all the adversities, the small people in smaller groups kept on fighting the onslaught on India, first by Mughals, the Muslims, the Mughals, and later on by the Britishers, all that, that there is a continuous spectrum, and that continuity should be recreated or rewritten. So I am very happy to see that there's this big gap which was left between what happens after the death of Shivaji. How initially Sambhaji carries on the legacy, then how Rajaram carries on the legacy, then how Tara Rani carries on the legacy, then back to the Chhatrapati in Satara, and then the Peshwas in Pune, and then the Peshwas one after another. After the debacle of Panipat also, they don't give up. We have the battles fought by Shindes, the Holkars, the Gaikwads, the Bhosles. In this entire spectrum of valor and, the wish to actually go for what is called Hindavi Swarajya, as Colonel Atle very beautifully explained, that it was Mahadaji Shinde who was actually the force behind establishment of a Mughal kingdom back, or not Mughal, but a Muslim kingdom in Delhi. And basically the protection was given by the Shindes. So basically it was the rule of the Shindes in Delhi, and the Britishers were wise enough to understand this and always tried to have their battle against the Marathas. So that part of the history which is not very well publicized or not very well taught to the children in the school has been brought out very well. And I would very much appreciate if an attempt is made, sir, to, in a very brief manner in Marathi, this entire chronology should be created for school children to be aware of this legacy. That is something which I find is still lacking. And therefore, and another thing is, and also in Hindi, sir, because the moment you go out of Maharashtra, even Shivaji is described in terms of how Jawaharlal Nehru has described. And Jawaharlal Nehru has taken it from the Britishers who described Shivaji as Pahadi Chuha. So Shivaji is nothing great. He was just a Pahadi Chuha who was trying to जसा उंदीर कुरतडतो एखाद्या गोष्टीला आणि in very small with very small effects, तसा this पहाडी चूहा हा औरंगजेबाच्या साम्राज्याला कुरतडायचा प्रयत्न करत होता. That is how the Britishers describe Shivaji, and that is how even Jawaharlal Nehru has described Shivaji. And I am telling this because we had in our school, we had one book prescribed for rapid reading, and there were only 4 chapters in it: Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, and Vallabhbhai Patel. And then Jawaharlal Nehru was described as, apart from so many other things, he was also a great writer. And in so many books, etc., etc. And there I found his description that he describes Shivaji as Pahadi Chuha. So if we have this book called out in brief in Hindi for school children, then the true history of, and what I find, what I was told by this gentleman, that we have to rebuild this continuous spectrum. Some people were fighting from Maharashtra, some were fighting from Punjab, some were fighting from Bihar, some were fighting from Madras, and we have not been able to connect these dots into a regular continuum. So that is something which remains to be done, and I am sure that people like Colonel Atle has taken so much pains to compile and bring out this book, and so much well-studied personalities like Mr. Sohni. I think not naming just these two, I think it remains with all of us as a duty that we have to keep writing those things. Maybe it's an anecdote, maybe you may feel ki who is going to read what I am writing, but you never know. Some people, without thinking this, kept on writing manuscripts, and that is how, after so much of destruction of literature, somebody in South India finds out a copy of Chanakya's Arthashastra. So you never know what is the, how this will sort of give results or bring fruit in future times. So it remains as a duty to all of us to write about India, and most importantly, there has been a sense of Atma Glani, we have never been, I feel so that it is very, very difficult to get out of that sense of Atmaglani. You know, we are nothing. We cannot do anything. We cannot achieve anything. So that Atma Bodh has to come back, and that has to come back through the efforts of all of us, but more importantly, the elders who are sitting here today and may think that whatever is the value of whatever I write, is there any value to it? So there is definitely a value to it, and that must be that's how the legacy can be taken forward. So thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful book which tries to fill up the gap in the history books of the curriculum. And I'm sure more such attempts, and in more Indian languages and more for school children would give us a much more incentive to come out of that sense of Atmaglani. So with these words, once again, thanks to everybody. Thank you.
Ms. Soni wants to make a point.
I think it's important for us to know also that the assessment from the Afghan side of what happened in Panipat is markedly different from the assessment from other sides. In that battle, the Afghan army was badly mauled. They incurred very substantial losses. But more important than the losses that they incurred was the fact that Ahmad Shah Abdali had in mind the establishment in India of an empire of his own, replicating what Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur had done. He wanted also to exceed what Nadir Shah had done. He had been the head of the bodyguard of Nadir Shah Afzal when Nadir Shah had come to Delhi in 1739. And he had gone back with him, and he was in fact in charge of the rear guard of Nadir Shah as he retreated. The whole treasure was kept in one place, secret place. And Abdali had come back to Afghanistan. Meanwhile, there was a coup, there was an assassination of Nadir Shah. Abdali had charged back, found that Nadir Shah had been killed. The rumors were not wrong. He went and took that treasure, came back, purchased various nobles right across the Pashtun community, and got made Amir of Afghanistan, consolidated Afghanistan, but then had dreams, in fact a goal of conquering India and establishing a dynasty of his own. So the Afghan reviews of the Battle of Panipat note that that dream failed, and it failed because of the Maratha confrontation at Panipat. And therefore, we go by various reviews of that battle as a debacle for us, a disaster for us. The fact of the matter is that a force from Maharashtra went all the way to Delhi, which is more farther from Delhi than Kabul is from Delhi, and defeated, in fact, frustrated the ambition of one of the most shrewd, capable, and militarist and determined invaders of India. So that is the Afghan appreciation, which I thought I should make clear.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. On behalf of Indus Source Books and Bhavan, you want to present copies of books to the honored guests. On behalf of Bhavan, the copy of Jnaneshwari is being presented to the chief guest. It's already late. I will now request Professor Nandakumar Kakirde to propose a vote of thanks, but before he does that, and he'll do a competent job of that, I want to myself personally thank each and every one of you for battling the Pune traffic, which is more difficult than Battle of Panipat, and making it here. Thank you so very much. Mr. Kakirde, please.
I have a very pleasure duty to perform on behalf of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan Pune Kendra. I really appreciate the way in which both the speakers, chief guest and our Mendare madam has put her points across. Look, the present generation and maybe 2-3 generations are not really aware of the history which has been taken back, because in our curriculum it has been taken out. And what madam has said is rightly correct, that yes, we have to go back and आत्म जे ग्लानी आलेली आहे ती ग्लानी काढून आपल्याला हा सगळा करण्याची गरज आहे. दिस इज द टाइम, अँड आय थिंक भारतीय विद्याभवन हॅज अ रोल टू प्ले इन दिस. दॅट्स वाय आय अप्रिशिएट सर Srinivasrao Sohni, the way in which he has interpreted the whole this thing and explained शिवाजी महाराजांच्या सगळ्या बालपणाचं आणि त्याच्या सगळ्याची. सो आय रिअली ॲप्रिशिएट अँड थँक्यू व्हेरी मच सर फॉर कमिंग and delivering a very given insight of this particular thing. Mendare madam, who is the chairperson of Pune Kendra, she always gives a different thing always, and that is how today also she has said. Thank you very much madam. And the author, Miss Colonel Anil Atle, is a member of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan Pune Kendra committee. He has already written 7 books and this is his 8th book which he has written. फक्त त्याने आता मराठीत लिहा असं म्हणलं आहे. त्यांना वाटलं तर मी मॅडमना म्हणलं की मी मदत करीन त्यांना, काही हरकत नाही. पण हा इतिहास आपल्या महाराष्ट्रीयन लोकांना आला पाहिजे. हे पुस्तक भारतभर जावो. इंडस यांना मी मनापासून धन्यवाद देतो. आपण सगळेजण इथं आला त्याबद्दल भारतीय विद्याभवनतर्फे सर्वांना पुन्हा एकदा धन्यवाद देतो आणि इथं कार्यक्रम संपला असं जाहीर करतो. थँक्यू व्हेरी मच. बाहेर कॉफी पान आहे, पुन्हा सगळ्यांनी चहा कॉफी पान घ्यावं आणि कार्यक्रम संपला. थँक्यू व्हेरी मच.